DC The Voice, Alabama Prisoner Profiles. What's going on with y'all, man? Today I got something special for y'all, man. I have an interview with an author who a lot of his works about the system have appeared in several notable outlets. An author by the name of Mr. Matthew Whalan, and he has also written a few books on his findings of his research along his journey. So without further ado, we have Mr. Matthew Whalan. Man, how you doing, man?
Doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming on the platform, man. So where are you from originally?
I'm from New England. I'm from Massachusetts.
Oh, that's what's up, man. That's near Connecticut, isn't it?
Somewhat, yeah, definitely.
Okay. I didn't want to sound stupid right
Both
there.
New England.
I dated a girl in college that was from up that way. I got you. So what got you interested in writing, becoming a writer?
I guess I became interested in reading when I was younger, like late middle school, early high school years, reading like not, reading outside of school, and I basically I was a big basketball player, and I kind of quit playing basketball to pursue reading and writing when I was like 14. So
Oh, you have a better shot at becoming a writer than a pro basketball player.
Yeah, you might be surprised.
You got some hoops, bro. I can't play organized. I've never played organized basketball, but I always played football for most of my life. And shit, I'm terrible. For the last couple of years, I didn't know that they were shooting the ball with just one hand. I'm not thinking back now. I'm like, I always used to use two hands back in the day and missed every shot. They used to laugh at me, question my blackness. It was terrible.
No, I can definitely shoot. Yeah, I can definitely score. Yeah.
So what inspired you to start your writings about the prison system and just criminal justice reform in general?
Yeah, around those same years, I became interested in the case of a death row inmate in Alabama, and I kind of just followed the prisons ever since. I mean, I've covered other prisons, connected with other prisoners. During the pandemic, I was working on a project about how mass incarceration just affects, different people and their communities in Alabama, everywhere from inside the prisons to, families and out in the community. And while I was doing that, the pandemic broke out. And so I sort of tabled that project and just started writing straight up investigative news articles about what was going on in the prisons. And I've continued to do that on and off over the past, ever since. So, yeah.
And what are the names of some of the publications you've written for and stuff? Go ahead and plug all that.
Sure. I mean, you can find most of what I do, most of the work I do, even if it's published elsewhere, it's all compiled on my Substack, hardtimesreviewer.substack.com. And people should buy my new book. It's called Bullock, Chronicles of Deprivation and Despair in an American Prison, about Bullock Prison in Union Springs, Alabama.
And so this book about Bullock, for all the viewers that are listening, Pitbull has been moved to Bullock, and I haven't talked to him. Hopefully he's going to take some type of program there, because I don't know if they send you there before you get ready to go home or if he's got in trouble or not. But this book about Bullock, does it have, it's individualized, it's like a compilation of experiences? Were you talking to folks that are incarcerated in Bullock?
Yeah, so the book covers a 6-month period in Bullock through the winter, which was unusually cold for the region. Even saw snow in parts of Alabama. And the plumbing and heating systems broke down through the winter. And the stories in the book just they both chronicle what's going on in the prisons, and it focuses heavily on the living conditions in the prisons, and also goes into some of the history of the Alabama prison system as well, some of the legal history, and it follows fairly a substantial number of prisoners in Bullock over that 6-month period, chronicles their lives and the breakdown of the conditions in the already dilapidated, already poor living conditions of Bullock.
I got you. So Bullock, that's like the psych camp, isn't it?
So it is in theory it's intended to be the sort of mental health oriented prison, but the prisons are so overcrowded in Bullock that people kind of deal with their mental health issues all over the state, and Bullock is design capacity. That's design capacity is 919, and it has over. I think it has over. I should know this in the book. I think it has over 1,500 prisoners in it right now.
Damn, I would say that's the case with most prisons in Alabama. They're overcrowded by a couple hundred or half of what they're supposed to be, I would say.
Yes, and I would just add that somebody asked me the other day, like, do you think Bullock is the worst one? And I would say, actually, I wrote the book for the opposite reason. It's what goes on in Bullock is really not unique to Alabama prisons or other prisons in the country in many states. But yeah, it's really not unique to the problems I've reported on throughout the prison system. And I wrote the book because it's a good example. It's not because it's special.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in some of those, so you're saying most of those, your average experience in Bullock translates to most other prisons in the United States, huh?
Yeah, I haven't covered other states as extensively, and I do think many states have a claim of being the worst. I remember several months ago, my girlfriend asked me to Google what's the worst prison and what's the best prison. If you Google what state has the best prisons and the worst prisons, if you Google what state has the worst prisons, there's several answers come up. If you Google what state has the best prisons, Google doesn't know what you mean. It's like Google is like, did you mean which state has the worst prisons?
You got to put some filters on there, like for the best prison for conditions, the best prisons as far as violence. Because that makes sense.
Yeah. Alabama has been consistently very bad, and also has pretty much has done almost nothing to fix the situation over the years. Like, even Texas has been able to reduce its overcrowding, arguably more than Alabama, and Texas is not a nice place to be in prison either. So,
if you ask me, I guess maybe as far as living conditions, it would be states that have multiple sports teams, prominent cities frequented by celebrities, lotteries, major funding coming into. Like next to us, we got, I would say, Georgia. I would say their facilities are fairly, way nicer and better living conditions, but they still pretty much got the same rate of violence.
I should know more about how Georgia and Alabama compare. There's certainly, I've looked at that question more closely when it comes to the death penalty, actually, and there's a lot of similarities there. But it's an interesting question. I mean, I'm sure we figured out quickly how overcrowded Georgia's system is, but you hear plenty of horrifying stories come out of Georgia as well. A couple of years ago, according to a news report, a guy in a Georgia jail was, quote, eaten alive by bed bugs and died. Was discovered that way. So yeah, I'm not saying one story here or there means it's better or worse, but if if Georgia's prison system is better than yours, that's a really bad sign.
Oh God. So let's see. How has your perspective on the criminal justice system evolved since you began your research and writing?
Oh, that's a really good question. I mean, I would say there are a few things. I mean, I think I've become less opinionated over the years and more focused on my task just being, at least in my work. I mean, I have my opinions about various things. I'm happy to talk about them on the show, but at least in my reporting and my writing, I try to pretty relentlessly document what I'm seeing, and consider my main job to be documenting the crises and letting the audience decide what to think, and in some cases, I hope the tremendous amount of suffering that's being documented just speaks for itself. And partly like, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a sociologist or criminologist or anything. So, I try to be, careful about, I try to know, what I'm best at and how I can best contribute. And I would say that, I think, we'll probably talk about this more later. I think you sent me some of the questions. We'll probably talk about this more later, but I've become, I guess I read more in a similar way. I read less theory, the more I do this work. And, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think the most important thing about being a reporter, a good interviewer, a good, and I've seen your interviews, I think you're good at this, is really listening, and I try to specialize in people and places who people don't know about, who haven't been covered by journalists before.
Right. I would say, as far as like on the YouTube side, that's kind of why I start. There's not really any channels out there as far as prison content that covered Alabama. So, with me not being a current or former prisoner, I just kind of had to base a lot of my stuff off the hard facts, like you said, stuff that's already been reported elsewhere, and just kind of highlighting it, like, hey, look what's going on in our state, and bringing that to the people.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
what do you think are the most common misconceptions about the system here in Alabama?
Well, I mean, I mean, it's hard to say. I don't want to make assumptions about
Mm-hmm.
what people in Alice, since I don't live there. I don't want to make assumptions about what people who do live there have as misconceptions.
We'll just say
But
prison in general. How about that?
yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. I think, a lot of people assume that, like most of the prisoners, especially given how long a lot of their sentences are and how dangerous the prisons are, must be like really dangerous, violent people. And, as Eddie Burkhalter, another journalist, has pointed out, wrote the foreword to my new book. The Alabama Department of Corrections itself only classifies, I think, 60% of its prisoners as violent offenders. And even that term is a legal term, which doesn't necessarily mean that all of those people like hurt someone in the course of their crime. The example he uses is like, if you steal a lawnmower when somebody is not home out of their garage, like that can be classified as a violent felony, as a violent crime. So,
Burglary. Yeah, it
yeah.
makes sense.
So I think that
That's crazy though. That sounds. I guess the burglary, but that just sounds more kind of like theft. I thought you were going more like kind of like stealing versus robbing type deal with it.
I would say, yeah, there are a couple other misconceptions I would touch on. One is that the like I was thinking about how to phrase this. So I think one misconception is that like if you are somebody who cares a lot about crime or doesn't care about prisoners or thinks that they're getting what they deserve and supports the prison system they're in. Like, I don't judge people for feeling that way, particularly if somebody's been a victim of a violent crime. I'm not going to judge their reaction to that. I do, but I do think it's important for people to know that that even if that's the position one takes, a system that's overcrowded in the way that Alabama's is poses real dangers to everyone, regardless of what they think about prisoners themselves. You have one of the biggest problems is because of these conditions, there are a lot of contagious illnesses, some of which seem kind of, outdated in some ways.
That's what I
And
was thinking earlier. You said whatever. What did you say? The disease you mentioned earlier. It sounded like biblical. Like scabies, like stuff that shouldn't be. It's not a problem out in the real world, but it's a problem in there just because the overcrowding.
scabies. I mean, when the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic hit the United States, Alabama's prisons were still dealing with a tuberculosis outbreak.
See,
Uh,
yeah.
you have, which still comes up at times. People died of sepsis. And also even with more common things like Hep C or HIV, like prisoners are going to get out. People come to and from these facilities every day. You have talk about things like tuberculosis or scabies or, things that might be more like easily transmissible, COVID for that matter, um,
Mm-hmm.
uh, people, most of the prisoners are going to get out at some point, and people come to and from these facilities to work and sometimes volunteer, every day, and then go back to the communities they live in. um, you know, you might think all those prisoners are getting everything they deserve, and you could still get, COVID or tuberculosis or whatever it is because of that.
Right. I
Yeah,
always say,
they're
like
all,
they've heard me say it on the channel, that your punishment is being there, and anything extra is just that extra.
yeah, yeah. So, yeah, it's, and then also I would say, I don't know, this might be, I think, pretty commonly accepted at this point, but I think it's there's some misconceptions about the extent to which what we might just call slavery is taking place. I mean, the a great many of these jobs are assigned, unpaid. Uh, People are confined, and there are consequences for not carrying those jobs out. I mean, I'm not trying to create a false equivalency between past iterations of slavery and that, but it's I do think it's a form of slavery and forced labor. But again, I think it's well known that that's going on. That might not be a misconception people have anymore, that it's not.
Yeah, our prisoners are not paid for their work, and I'm pretty sure if you don't go to work, they got creative ways. Maybe not tying you to a stick and or a pole and beating you like in the book I recited from a couple months ago with the warden back in the 30s and 40s. But maybe they'll just lock you up, or take your store or some other privileged way for you to entice you to working for essentially free, and then you can't get mad at them trying to make money whatever type of way they can through these jobs they're forced to do. They'll find the hustle some type of way, whether it's transporting stuff to and from or trying to smuggle stuff in.
Yeah.
So, do you think the media's portrayal of the system here is accurate, like whatever the news be reporting?
I mean, there, I should say there are plenty of good local reporters who I think do a good job covering the Alabama prisons. I mentioned one of them, Eddie Burkhalter. There's plenty of others, Beth Shelburne, Kim Kelly. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing the name right, but Erwin Hirin Cow, I think is how it's pronounced. There It's not common for journalists to have like a prison beat. A lot of times things that happen in prisons are covered by crime reporters because something happens in the prison that falls within their jurisdiction. Uh, but so it's not. It's often not an issue that it's especially staff writers are assigned to focus on exclusively, even though the prisons are so enormous. But yeah, and also there's plenty of terrible coverage as well. I think that and I might get myself in trouble at some points with some of my feelings about some of this stuff. I think that some media, I think actually, honestly, I think academia has been pretty harmful to I think a lot of people, I would say, like, I consider myself on their side, who like we want the same things, probably share a lot of the same politics, has gone about covering and researching, has gone about the scholarship on the prisons, I think, is pretty alienating to people who are not academic, who are maybe less political, who have various educational backgrounds or so and I'm happy to talk about that more. I'm happy to elaborate on that if you want to get into it.
It seems as if, like, I would say the news media at least is just kind of surface level reporting, for the status quo, more so on the side of the system, without having it be too wild. And for, if you want good, more accurate, factual stuff, you got to go looking for it, and you got to do more reading, like you would say, to find your Substack, or you might, you got to go look for this stuff and not just, take whatever they got on the news for face value. Um, let's see. So, how does your writing challenge or critique the status quo of the reform efforts? Just like we were just saying, you would say.
I mean, I think that I think my writing documents the crises pretty clearly, just how overcrowd, just all the levels of problems that are caused by these overcrowded prisons. And I think my work demonstrates that this is a model that really can't succeed unless it's designed to fail.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Have you come across any, or what do you think any are the best alternatives to incarceration here that should be explored, or just in general?
I mean, in general, in Alabama, I think there are a lot of cases. I think there are a lot of things that can just that Alabama can just stop doing. That would be a good start. And not to single out Alabama again. These have been issues in other states as well. I'm not denying that. But yeah, I mean, to quote one prisoner named Milton Jones. I'm not sure if you saw my stories about him on Substack. I'd love to talk to you about him sometime. He said the only way to solve overcrowding is to let some people go.
Right, common sense.
Yeah, and I do think the sentencing laws are so extreme in Alabama that there are plenty of prisoners who could be released without a major effect on the crime rate. Also, Alabama has been denying people for parole at over 80%, for a while. So that could stop, I mean, I think that, research about alternative models, a lot of the research about like what models are most successful are the most successful forms of punishing people for a crime, or the metric for that is like the crime rate and the recidivism rate, and the research about how alternative models in general, the extent to which they lower the crime rate or affect it at all is mixed. Outcomes vary. It's not 100%. But the same thing is true of mass incarceration, of prisons and mass incarceration in particular. Even a fairly moderate critique would be, which I think is true, that at the very least, mass incarceration, according to the research, is highly subject to the law of diminishing returns as a means of fighting crime. The more you do it, the longer you do it, the less effective it will be at lowering the crime rate. And there's a great book on that by Stephen Raphael and Michael Stoll, I believe, are the two researchers, called "Why Are So Many Americans in Prison" is the name of the book, which sort of demonstrates the research behind that. So I think I think that at the very least, alternative programs, even if they're not more successful at reducing crime, as long as they're not way more unsuccessful, they are a more humane way to respond to crime. And in a state like Alabama, who knows, like you might save somebody's life to be diverted into a program like that instead of going to prison. Alabama Appleseed has covered multiple cases of people who were sentenced to a year or two. Something happened and they got killed or died.
Shout out Alabama Appleseed. Shout out them.
Absolutely, they do great work. Yeah.
So, in your books, what would you say is the most, without too many spoilers, I guess, can you give an example of a struggle an inmate is going through in your book that you say is just the most, wow, that's crazy?
Yeah, it's hard to say, man. There's
so many.
Yeah, I mean, I will say one is that the week of Christmas, the sewage system was overflowing into the dorms, and prisoners were not being provided cleaning products. Nobody was coming in to take care of it. No employees. So two prisoners snaked. They put garbage bags over their arms and they reached down as far as they could into the bottom of the toilets and tried to, with their hands, pull out anything they could to try to relieve pressure on the system. Prisoners were telling each other not to use the bathroom. Filling garbage cans up with this material. So yeah, just an
toilet paper and whatever else they can flush down the sewage. Oh God.
Yeah, another thing is prisoners are only provided one roll of toilet paper a week. So often they will, when they run out, they'll like cut up their sheets and their t-shirts and things like that, which they can also be written up for because it's destruction of state property. And so they'll flush that stuff. So they'll flush that, and then the system and I'm not sure if this is the sole cause of all the plumbing issues, but I can guarantee it's very much not helping. I think that, and I really wonder if providing more toilet paper would help reduce some of the damage on these plumbing systems. Although at this point, maybe it's too late.
Right. I think about whether or not you think you could survive on one roll of toilet. I'm trying to think.
No,
I may need like a roll and a half, maybe, or something like that, because I try not to touch anything. So my hands wrapped up like a Christmas tree going back there. So
yeah, no, in fact, it's funny you say that. Because I love my food. I'm human. I use the bathroom a lot. And my girlfriend was like reading the book, like, yeah, it's no wonder you did like 40 pages on the toilet paper situation. You know, prisoners are trying to tell you about all this different kind of stuff, and you're like, yo, you good on toilet paper though? You
Hey,
know?
that it's the little things that matter the most, and you don't think about it, like toilet paper, air conditioning, things like
Yeah,
that.
no doubt. Heat, yeah. Yeah.
So, would you see a growing trend? Would you say in the literature and media surrounding the prison system? And what are your thoughts on the movement?
Honestly, I haven't until recently. I
All
mean,
right.
I am happy to hear about. There's a documentary coming out about the prison system in Alabama, which I haven't seen yet. I
Mm-hmm.
don't. Yeah. So that was came as a pleasant surprise because it has felt, often feels lonely focusing on this work for so long. Um, and I mentioned before that I think there probably is a growing body of scholarship on this topic, but I find that often the quality and particularly the accessibility to everyday people who just want to learn more about it is lacking.
Definitely, I'd be trying to show. I would say like my family or like my parents or my sisters. They most people there's like I don't want to hear about that. Like like people are like I mean well somebody there's just because you don't want to hear about somebody suffering that mean they're not suffering. Like just you knowing about it is that's progress. Educating the public.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I don't know. I think that um,
If
I
I
keep
was in that position or you were in that position, you know what I'm saying? You want somebody to give a damn. So that's how I try to look at it.
yeah, for sure. And I guess I will sort of elaborate on this because I do think part of the reason like more people don't care about prisoners is something like we need to confront as citizens, the fact that we're treating fellow human beings this way, and maybe there are too many ways it's easy not to care about them. But I would say that I do think that a lot of the current literature, a lot of the scholarship is very insular, um, and if you're just like a random person who's like never thought about this, never read about this before, and let's say you come across this interview and like, yeah, I'm going to Google books about this, and order the first one that looks good that comes up. Like, um, I think people will find it inaccessible, and the way prisons are written about is like, it's almost like every scholar who has like studied prisons in the past 10 years 20 years has been told at some point, like, if you want to be taken seriously and if you want to graduate at some point in your work you have to quote uh, Michel Foucault, the French
Mm-hmm.
philosopher. um, and uh, I just find that injection of abstract theory into the coverage of prisons very unhelpful. And in fact, I was just looking at something. Can I read you a paragraph of something?
Go for it.
All right. So this is this is a book by a scholar named Robert Chase. All right.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hefty tome,
Yeah.
500-page something book, and there's a lot of important work, based on important oral histories, covering important topics in here. But just to give you like an example of what, and it's not a special, like I'm not saying this is not a special case,
Yeah.
this kind of stuff is rampant. Like I'm just gonna at the end of the introduction. I think the purpose of an introduction to a book is like to give the reader some idea of what the book is going to be about
Mm-hmm.
and maybe to like get their attention so they want to read it. Okay. So just keep that in your mind while I read the last paragraph of the introduction to this 500-page book. This is the note he's ending the chapter on. That is the chapter where you convince people to read the rest of it. Okay. So he says, the history of concomitant resistance and new kinds of oppressive state building demonstrate that carceral regimes are simultaneously intractable yet malleable. Nonetheless, histories of prisoner resistance and the concurrent construction of carceral states must attempt the difficult task of disentangling geographies that create temporal variety and strategies of resistance bound to the physical reality of region and historical difference.
Damn, that was a mouthful.
Who's that for? You know?
People that aren't dumbasses, it sounds like. You gotta have some type of
Well,
brain,
see,
you know.
that's
A lot of
that's
work.
my exact fear, you know, is that, you know, and look, like I obsessively am consuming literature on this stuff, so I can read an introduction that's something I don't really get or I think sucks, and I can recognize, like I said, there's valuable stuff in this book, and I guess I have the confidence to read through, like to be like, okay, that paragraph sucks, and I don't get it, but I'm just going to keep going to see what I can get from this, or if, you know. But I think the problem is a lot of people, especially people who aren't like me, aren't like you, like they don't think about this stuff very much. They just ordered a random book online to try to learn something about it. I think their reaction when they read something like that is like, I'm not smart enough to understand this, you know?
Right.
I'm not smart enough to learn about this, when maybe the writer wasn't smart enough to be able to put it into language that could help you understand it better, you know? So I think, you know, that academic style where people just make up terms, they quote Foucault all the time, and they make up these academic terms and they cite their friends who made up terms. And, you know, I mean, it's just, which also, yeah, I mean, it reminds me of like, uh, there's yeah, I don't know. I don't want to get too sidetracked on this, but there was a long debate around homelessness a while back about whether we should change the word to unhoused, you know, call them unhoused people instead of homeless people. And I just get this feeling like there's like people in academia, maybe like my fellow people on the left, even, like we get to a point where we can't think of a solution to a problem, and we're like, man, let's try a name change, you know?
Right. Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. I'm like, still means the same thing.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah, unhoused sounds a lot better. A little bit more. Yeah, it sounds a lot better.
sure.
Sounds
Yeah.
like what you might say to a chick you're picking up or something like that instead of home. I'm unhoused at the moment, you know. I'm unmobile at the moment. My vehicle is.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think, you know, I think it can be, I think the scholarship is really alienating to people. It's too abstract, and it's not concrete enough. I tried to make the book very accessible, you know, like I like to think pretty much anybody could read it, you know, whether you like share my politics or whether you read books all the time or not. Like I like to think people could pick this book up and read it.
So, bouncing off what you just said about writers influencing you, how people understand, how can you, like authors, journalists, and other storytellers, influence public perception on the justice system? How do you think? What do you think? What can further be done by us to get the word out there more? I guess make people understand.
Yeah, I think, and it's difficult, you know, the process is difficult, but I think that, you know, trying to interview as many prisoners as possible, is important. You know, there are a lot of articles about things like prisons and homelessness that will quote various officials and various people involved, and they won't interview any prisoners or homeless people as sources. So I think that is important, not just for purposes of like inclusivity or whatever, but actually for like real journalistic purposes of getting the whole story and corroboration and trying to get to the truth. And I think that it's also a topic that people could report on more heavily. Like, I mean, maybe people should have a prison beat at some of the news outlets in Alabama. Like, and I mean, yeah, I guess I just hope that, I guess I just hope that the reporting draws enough attention to it that the public is able to use it to put pressure on people in power, you know, and that more people want to learn about it. And I hope also, I really, like I've mentioned, like I really tried not to be political in this project. Like I recognize I'm from New England. I'm writing about Alabama, much more conservative state than I'm from, but this issue affects all kinds of people, you know. Like I don't know what political affiliation all my sources are, or their families, or uh, Republicans have kids in prison too. So I hope that you know people can approach this issue in a less political way, especially in more conservative states where it really does affect everybody, you know.
It kind of sucks, but I would say that's really what makes people pay more attention to the stuff. For example, like the most famous popular video on my channel about the Daniel Williams case, about that horrible stuff happening to the Caucasian young man. And I've got a bunch of stories on there of stuff happening. The people just the outrage just isn't there until it's one of their own or something like that. I guess I would say.
Yeah, totally. And I hope the work influences politics, you know, but I also hope I don't really need to tell anybody what to think when they read the stories. I hope it speaks for itself. But yeah, no, I hope people do read it and become outraged and become politically active about it, you know, regardless of like which way they lean, you know.
So, what is the most important message you want readers to take away from your work on the system and the justice system in general?
I mean, I think the the violence, the just the tremendous amount of suffering that's taking place. You know, I mean, you asked me the first question you asked me was like, what got you interested in this? And I sort of gave you a timeline of like how I started working on this stuff. But I think the thing that really makes me care about it is just the tremendous amount of suffering among people who, most of the world is not paying attention to. A lot of guys go, months or years without a phone call. Just, yeah, I mean, I can't, it's, there's a phrase in the prisons, something the prisoners say a lot is, dogs get treated better than we do, you know? And it's true, like actually it's literally true. Like what kind of a monster would put a pet dog in a situation like this, you know?
My cat living good. I know that.
And but this is how we treat him.
So, what's next for you? What you got cooking up in the lab?
I'm working on a few things. One is what I think will become a book about a prisoner named Milton Jones, who he is a prisoner who was convicted of rape and when he was 15 and claims to be innocent. I think has a pretty strong case for innocence. He was illiterate. He had no legal guardian with him throughout the legal proceedings, no legal guardian in the state. He was 15. There's no real physical evidence against him in the court file. The state names the physical evidence against him as, quote, I've never seen this in a legal document before, quote, 2 negroid pubic hairs. No DNA proof. He believes he knows who did it. I tracked down the person he says did it. It turns out that person is now in prison for murder.
Damn.
And the saddest part of that whole story is that all happened in 1983, and he is still in prison, and almost 42 years, almost 43 years later now. So, yeah, he was convicted as an adult, as a child. Oh, and for the longest time, I was trying to track down his trial transcript, and eventually had a lawyer friend in Alabama who had some trouble getting it, but was eventually able to get his whole court file. And there's no transcript of the trial, so they either lost it or they never made one. And he's only got a few remaining family. Oh, yeah. Also, his mother was a child prostitute who had him when she was 15, the same age that he ended up, later having all these things happen to him. There's just so many heartbreaking layers to the case, He taught himself how to read in prison, but is now going blind due to diabetes that's been poorly treated. So, yeah, heartbreaking.
Maybe you can get some type of Hail Mary furlough or something like that.
Yeah, we're hoping for something. I just hope he gets to walk out of that prison someday. Yeah, free Milton Jones.
So go ahead and give a shout out to all your platforms and let everybody know where they can find you one more time before we get out of here.
Yeah, you can buy the book, Bullock Chronicles of Deprivation and Despair in an American Prison. You can buy it on Amazon. You can buy it on leftwingbooks.net. Yeah, you could have it ordered to your local bookstore.
All right, Matthew Whalan, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, sir, for blessing the platform, and thank you for staying on me to get this done.
Thank you, man. Thanks so much. So good to meet you.
You too, man. DC The Voice, Alabama Prisoner Profiles. Out the gate.